All right, we are coming at you off the edge. This is episode 9. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He is Cameron Lynch. Well, no, he's not. He's Camstradamus now after after he just basically predicted. I think Ryan Poles just literally watched our the clip that I put out or just our show in general and was just like, you know what? Cam's onto something. We should pick Zach Pickens and we should pick Gervon Dexter and put them on the same defensive line and complement each other. That was awesome. We're going to get into all of that, Cam. We're going to be talking about the NFC North today and just going all out here. We love the draft. It was a lot of fun to watch and just, we really covered it up until the final day that we could. So we're going to be doing that today, giving out draft grades. Well, you'll find out if your team drafted well, in our opinion, or your team didn't. But before we do, I just need to let you know that betonline.ag is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs: basketball, MLB, NHL, right to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. Head on over to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code Bleav to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online where the game starts. So Cam, we're going to start with the NFC North, and we're going to start with the Chicago Bears and show the Bears faithful some love. They showed us a lot of love over on YouTube. We're now over 230 subscribers. So, big shout out to them. Big shout out to Swifty over there, who, recommended our channel and gave us a shout out. But Cam, we wouldn't be here without you. Camstradamus, my guy.
Camstradamus. I got the crystal ball over here.
I love it. So I'm excited to dive into it, Cam. They at pick number 10. All right, the Chicago Bears ended up taking Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle at Tennessee. They did not take the guy right in their backyard, Northwestern. Right, they didn't take Skoronski. How did you feel about that selection, my guy?
Yeah, we were actually talking about this earlier with our producer Joe. Shout out to Joe. He has a great podcast as well, and we talked about it with just Darnell Wright. My thoughts on him were I love the way he plays. He has a nasty edge to him, Jake. Right, and so that nasty edge, you see a lot of the hand chops going down. You see him burying defensive linemen. I love it, and I'm sure the Bears saw it as well. As a defensive guy, I wouldn't like it, right? But as someone who would want, your program to go another direction, a better direction, you got Justin Fields there. You want a guy protecting them like that. So I like it. And you talked about our guy from Northwestern, his hands. He has some of the better hands in this draft. You'll see on his tape, he's kick sliding. His hands are up all the time. We talk about this when it comes to boxers. Right. And anytime you take a boxing class, they always say, keep your hands up, protect your face. When you get tired, those hands drop. Same thing with tackles, same things with this pass set. When guys get tired, those hands drop, Jake. I played punt on the punt team, and I know always keep those hands active. So our guy from Northwestern, he does a great job of doing that. Unfortunately, he didn't go to the Bears, but Darnell Wright did. Coming out of Tennessee, I love the pick, Jake. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what the Bears are going to do. I got a B+ for him out of this draft. They made some good moves there. I love what they did in their war room. And then if people don't really understand what we're talking about when it comes to kind of the clip going viral a little bit here, the Camstradamus, the globe that we have here. So Jake and I, we were talking about some of our sleeper defensive ends, some of our sleeper defensive tackles, and Gervon Dexter, he was on that, and Zach Pickens was on there as well. We talked about Gervon Dexter, about his power. Sometimes his first step didn't seem too fast, but he's super powerful, right? And how we talk about Pickens, him having that great get off and being able to come up the field and be able to wrap around some of those powerful players. And a linebacker, I put myself in that position, being able to scrape and make plays. So we talked about it. The guys got drafted, and now we're going viral. So the goal is to have more takes, of us giving you all a breakdown, right, of how we visualize, how we see things, and really educating everybody, on these picks, and excited to do more. So Jake, what are your thoughts on the Bears draft process there.
I mean, you said that well. I really like Darnell Wright for starters. Nasty, just a nasty dude. I love that mean streak and the big uglies. I don't know if he's going to start at left tackle or right tackle. I saw him as a right tackle. I think if Braxton Jones is starting at left tackle, I know they have other guys. Kellen Diesch is someone that intrigued me last year, but he doesn't really have the body, in my opinion. So I don't know how that's going along. They have Larry Borum and they have Alex Leatherwood as well as Bobby Haskins, who is a undrafted free agent. But when I look at Darnell Wright on tape for Tennessee, that's exactly what you want, as one of your tackles in the NFL. I mean, I think he's got a really high floor, day one starter, and I think the Bears needed that. You got to protect Justin Fields. And I said this, during our live stream, or not live stream, our last episode where we were, basically picking all these, making these picks in our mock draft. Look, Justin Fields, you doubled down on him. You traded down. All for it. I think it was the right move because you Bleav in Justin Fields. So now you owe it to him. Now that you Bleav in him, you owe it to him to go out and get him protection. And I think that's what Darnell Wright does, not just as protector, but can help you in the run game. Gervon Dexter, we talk about it. I think at the end of the day, they needed help on the defensive line, Cam. They lost a lot of guys there. I think he fits right in. They still have Justin Jones. They still have DeMarcus Walker, Rasheem Green, Andrew Billings. They have guys on their team, but they went out and they addressed the position. They go out and get Zach Pickens. They go and get Gervon Dexter, and they go out and get Travis Bell, who we'll be talking about later on out of Kennesaw State. But I thought, Ryan Poles came out and was like, we want to address the line of scrimmage, okay? On both sides of the ball. We're going to go out and get our guy who's going to protect, our quarterback, and we're also going to go out and beef up that interior. And Cam, as a defensive guy, you got to love that.
Yeah, you got to love it. And we talk about protecting the quarterback here. I'm looking at PFF, the Pro Football Focus. I know we talk about a lot of acronyms here for folks who don't know. PFF is a great source. And so for Darnell Wright, what I have here in 2022 is he only allowed 8 pressures, Jake. That's insane, right?
Dude's a wall.
He's a wall. He's a wall. So to do that in the SEC, you think about how many players got drafted. A lot of those folks who didn't watch the draft, the people who got drafted are folks from the SEC. I'm seeing a whole bunch of SEC schools, a whole bunch of SEC players getting picked. And the fact that he only allowed 8 pressures in the 2022 season, that's insane. I'm sure most of them came from UGA, right? Because a lot of those guys are dogs. Literally and figuratively. A lot of them went to the Eagles, but just as you mentioned, for the Bears to beef up that offensive line, that's a great move. And then even on the defensive side, they got some guys who can plug up some holes, Jake, and who are fast actually, so they can make some of those holes disappear. Right, a lot of times when you play linebacker, if the guy is a little bit too fast, you're like, wait a minute, I need you to hold that up a little bit. Right, Gervon Dexter running a 4.88, being that big, that's going to be dangerous. So at the end of the day, whenever teams line up against the Bears, they're going to know they're going to go up against some guys that aren't moving, Jake, and aren't allowing pressure to come in. So Bears, like I said, they got a B+ for me in this draft. They had some other great additions as well when it comes to the running back room. We talked about the defensive linemen. So, it's a change of guard here, Jake. I'm seeing a lot of pluses on this draft card, right? Back in the day, you kind of see some of the C- and the Bs. I think teams are really taking this serious when it comes to the draft because no one wants to watch losing football. So you got a guy like Justin Fields in your backfield, the franchise quarterback. Let's get some folks that can protect him and win some football games.
No, absolutely. I like the right pick, the Dexter pick. Pickens, I mean, I had a big fat smile on my face when, you brought up Pickens. I love watching that guy's tape. Just, I love watching him out of South Carolina. I love that pick. And that was, I believe, the first pick of the 3rd round. Then they go out and they get Roschon Johnson, the running back out of Texas. Now, there was some rumors that they could go after your guy, Bijan Robinson, who is the number 1 running back in the class. The Falcons end up scooping him at 8, which was interesting. I thought it was a little higher than I expected, but
very
okay.
High, yeah.
Roschon Johnson was, I think, the first top 10 running back I've ever scouted, in my opinion, that was a backup, like a straight up backup. I mean, you could say Zach Evans, who came in at 11 on my board, went to the Rams in the 6th round. He was a backup behind Judkins by the end of the year, but I don't know. I mean, Roschon Johnson has it all, man. This is an interesting pick because I'm a big fan of Khalil Herbert. I'm a big fan of Dante Foreman. If you guys don't know, his story coming back from the neck injury. A lot of people said he was done. The COVID year doesn't, but then this past year, he really popped off after they trade Christian McCaffrey. So you add him, they have Travis Homer, they have Treston Ebner, a 6th rounder from last year. They have a good running back room, Cam. That was my takeaway. I was like, okay, you're going in the 4th round, pick 115, you're getting Roschon Johnson. This is a future starting NFL running back.
Yeah, and you think about it, you're starting behind a guy like Bijan Robinson, who is quote unquote the best athlete to come out of this draft, right? They talk about Bijan like he was God's gift to earth, and I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's going to do great at the Falcons. So for God to be behind that, though, Jake, the point I'm getting to is they have a chip on their shoulder, right? Roschon is seeing a guy like Bijan, go number 8 to the Falcons. He's like, oh, wait, if he's doing that well, I play right behind him. That means I'm going to be going next. So it's really cool to see him, get drafted in the 4th round, going to the Bears. Like you said, the Bears are doubling down on Justin Fields. So he has offensive linemen that can block for him, right? We have some receivers in Tyler Scott coming out of Cincinnati who can catch the football and open up the game a little bit for him. I think that's extremely important. And then even on the defensive side, we just talked about it. You have some people movers on the other end who can get the offense the ball back. So I think that's really encouraging for a guy like Roschon Johnson. He might have some headaches, Jake, right, coming out of practice because he's going to be going up against those guys trying to block him in pass pro, but that's going to make him that much better. And like I said, he's going to have a chip on the shoulder when he's coming into this Bears team. The whole Bears organization in general, they have a chip on their shoulder. So I think he'll be a great fit for that team. And hey, it's going to be an interesting division, Jake. If people are getting their armor up, I would say. So I know we have some other teams to chat about, but it's the draft. The draft went really well this year. I'm super excited.
Yeah, no, I thought the Bears really did a nice job. I give them an A-. I mean, I think anytime you're able to get a guy like Tyler Scott, 10th overall wide receiver on my board, 133rd overall, big speedy guy, not big. I mean, he's 5'9", $177, but
he plays big.
Yeah, like he's a speedy guy that I think can work, in those bubble screens. He can make guys miss, stop and start ability, all of that. I think he, will compete for that 4th spot, whether that's with Dante Pettis or, Equinemius St. Brown, Velus Jones. I mean, I think he's right in that mix. This is a really good pick. Another best available. I thought Roschon Johnson was, a 2nd, 3rd round guy. So going out and getting those guys for your offense. They go, your linebacker guy, Noah Sewell, is an old school linebacker who people had as like a 1st round grade before the season started. So you get him in the 5th round out of Oregon. Love that pick. They go out and they get my guy, Terrell Smith, who we talked about out of Minnesota. Another top 10 corner on my board, another top 10. You hear that a lot, right? They got a lot of top 10 guys. By the way, Jervon and Pickens were both in my top 10. I Bleav Pickens was my 5th overall interior defensive lineman. I really liked him. They go and get Travis Bell to help in the interior, then Kendall Williamson, who's a interesting cornerback prospect, or DB rather, out of Stanford. He ran a 4.4, good 6 foot, 200 pound size there at pick 258. So the Bears got an A- from me, Cam. I really like what the Bears did, and they needed to do this because they took advantage of the fact, look, we're doubling down Justin Fields. We realize he's got abilities that other quarterbacks in this draft just don't have, and we want to take advantage of that. And so I like what they did. I think they deserve credit. Ryan Poles has a direction. Bears could compete for something this year, my guy. They could be interesting.
Yeah. And you talk about it too, just kind of filling in some of those voids with Roquan Smith leaving, to the Ravens, adding a guy like Sewell in there. That's going to be important. Adding these defensive linemen in there. That's all important. That they're trying to fill that void. When it comes to leadership with Roquan Smith, it's hard to replace, but you got guys coming in that are hungry. And on the defensive side, that can play some good football, Jake. So, like you said, Ryan Poles, good job there. Like I said, I gave him a B+. You gave him an A. That's that's not far off there. And we should see that transfer to the field in some dubs for the Bears squad there. So, yeah, Jake, it's going to be a good one. And so our next team, Jake, shall we move on here?
Yeah, so the Detroit Lions, they got a lot of scrutiny. Early on, a lot of people said that Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't worth the 12th overall pick. I mean, here's what I would say to that, okay? He's my favorite running back in the draft. Bijan's the better running back by grade, but my favorite, the guy I had the most fun watching, was Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs, the reason doesn't grade higher than Bijan Robinson is because he's not the pass protector Bijan Robinson is, but Jahmyr Gibbs is basically a slot receiver running back. Okay. Yeah. He's going to be a starting football player. I don't know how they'll use him. Probably, keep in mind they did bring in, who we were just talking about, right? With the Bears, they brought in David Montgomery. So I don't know how they're going to use him. I think there's a chance Gibbs is the starter. I think there's a chance Montgomery's the starter. They use Gibbs as a guy that's maybe dual backfield. Maybe they use him in the slot. But either way, this guy is just a baller. He makes plays. At Alabama, he's a superstar. He led the team in receiving. He was a big reason why in just an Alabama roster that was so unlike Alabama. They didn't have any, at least in my opinion, they didn't have a Calvin Ridley. They didn't have a Devontae Smith. They didn't have a Jamison Williams this year. It felt like they were missing something, and Jahmyr Gibbs provided that spark. And he actually is a transfer from Georgia Tech. So, I love that the fact that he came from Georgia Tech. He knows what it's like. Obviously, I'm not saying Georgia Tech's a small school by any stretch, but it's not Alabama. And then just to go from Georgia Tech to have that experience, play in the spotlight, he showed he can do it. And so when I look at the pick, I understand, okay, 12 is a little early. I had him as my 13th overall player. So I don't think it was too early. I think if they picked him at 12, that means other teams were looking at him around that time.
Yeah, I mean, and you got Gibbs, going to the Lions, and I know the Lions traded Swift to the Eagles right after that. And so they must have saw something in Gibbs that they didn't see in Swift, right? And you talk about David Montgomery with that lightning and that thunder type combination. That kind of takes me to the Saints, right? When they had Alvin Kamara and Ingram, Ingram is more seen as that thunder, and Alvin Kamara is seen as that lightning. And so, I can see that right now for the Lions. With Jahmyr Gibbs being that lightning. And you think about just the running back space in general, right? I know I was referred to Reggie Bush. I think Reggie Bush could have been used way better in the NFL, because you think about Christian McCaffrey. You think about Christian McCaffrey, when he went to the 49ers and the impact he had on that football team. I'm not saying Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have that same type of impact, but they are both great pass catchers. They're great in open space. And we talk about this in the Bleav in Rams podcast, Jake. Christian McCaffrey, when he was with the Panthers before he went to the 49ers, he was tearing the Rams up just by being in space and making people miss. And so Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to be that lightning for the Lions. He's going to be able to make people miss in open space. You might see him in the return game as well. Well, I don't know. Your 12th overall pick, I don't know if I want to put him in the return game there. Right. But
yeah, I don't want him anywhere near there, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Right. And later in his career, we might find a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs that can play special teams. He plays 7 or 8 years. He's kind of falling down the roster a little bit, put him on special teams and let him be dangerous. So Jahmyr Gibbs, what I'm saying is he can be effective and he can bring value to any team that he goes to by being able to catch the football. 103 passes for over 1,000 yards over the past 3 seasons. That's unbelievable. So I can see them using him more of as a lightning in a bottle there. And then kind of going down the list a little bit, Jake, we go on you got Sam Laporta at the tight end spot, an Iowa guy. You got Jack Campbell out of Iowa as well, right? So you got to think the Lions are leaning a little bit towards their Iowa guys. But, you got a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs who can catch the football. And you got a guy like Sam Laporta who can really catch the football. I think sometime in our notes, we talked about it, but I had in my notes, throw the ball up. Just throw the ball up. Laporta's going to come down with it. So it's really cool to see. It's really cool to see the Lions kind of attack those skill positions that you see here on the list. They don't have too many big guys, right, on this list. You got a lot of skill positions. So it's kind of cool to see. It's a lot of the notes for the Lions, Jake, was a lot of their picks were a reach, right? A lot of them were a reach. So we'll see how things play out when the season comes. But Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to be effective in the backfield, I Bleav.
So the way I saw it, Cam, is when you look at Jack Campbell, he's there's only kind of one Jack Campbell in this draft. So I kind of understand why they went out and got him. I just felt like I had higher grades on like Drew Sanders and, guys like that. But I mean, Campbell's not a bad player. I had a 3rd round grade on him. I just think it was a little too early, but the guy's an athlete. It's just the problem is, I want more instinct. I think he's more of a reactive linebacker, and you're a linebacker, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. He doesn't have that quick twitch. I just think at the end of the day, I mean, he's got the range. I'm a little worried about him. The the nagging UCL injury he had in spring this past year, during the spring practices and whatnot. But, I see strong. I don't see explosive. I see reactive. I don't see instinctual. And so I think he's going to be a good player. I think, Dan Campbell, this is Dan Campbell's guy. He's just a football player. When you hear him talk, you're like, okay, all right, I see it. And he's from Iowa. I always give it, like, Iowa's built different, man. The guys from Iowa are. And then that brings me to Sam Laporta, who was one of my guys, as you know. We talked about him in depth. I think he's the best tight end in the draft. I mean, I think, you may have reached on Campbell, but then you get Sam Laporta, who's the best tight end in the draft, in my opinion, at 34. That's a win. Then you get Brian Branch, who should not have been there. We talked about him. He was in our mock draft going off the board in the first round. They get him at pick 45. So Brian Branch, what he's going to do is he's going to allow you to have a guy that can play DB. And I say DB, he can play corner, he could play safety. A lot of teams were, kind of broken up about where he could play. They get Hendon Hooker at pick 68. I believe if I'm not mistaken, I believe they traded up right in front of the Rams and took him. I don't think the Rams were going to take him. But Hendon Hooker, now you have a guy after Jared Goff, right? Or you have a guy if Jared Goff gets hurt. Because I think Hendon Hooker in this class is the jack of all trades, master of none, but jack of all trades, right? So that's great. Broderick Martin, you add some depth to your interior there with Nwuzurike and McNeil and Kaminsky and Pascal and Buggs. I don't mind the Broderick Martin pick. I thought it was a little high, but I don't mind it. And then 5th round, they go out and they get Colby Sorsdahl, who I wasn't really familiar with out of William and Mary, but I feel like they know something we don't here. To go out and get a guy like that out of William and Mary, like, you clearly did a lot of research. You had a lot of intel. So I get that. And then Antoine Green to wrap it up, who I think I had mentioned him. And if I didn't, I was going to, and I forgot to. When we were talking about sleeper, like shadow sleepers, remember I was saying that? How you mentioned Cedric Tillman. I meant to mention Antoine Green, who's getting overshadowed by Josh Downs. And Antoine Green here, I think, is an absolute steal in 219. I think he's going to compete in that wide receiver room. We see it all the time in camp. These guys just sometimes, like, they just come out of nowhere, right? Oh, he's turning heads. We see that all the time. Cam, you were turning heads. There were, definitely some things that, like, you could probably find them on the internet, right? There were different, like, headlines, like Cameron Lynch turning heads in Rams camp. That happens. Like, guys turn heads. Like, guys make plays. Antoine Green, 7th rounder. Not a lot of people talking about him. Not a lot of people buzzing on him. But the guy didn't just come out of any D2 school and, like, no one knows who he is. Like, he played at North Carolina. He should be known. And I think he's going to make his presence known. You have guys like Marvin Jones Jr. coming back to the Lions for that reunion, which I love it there. You have Josh Reynolds. You have, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And, I think Khalif Raymond is a good player, but Antoine Green will challenge for reps on that in that wide receiver room. I believe it.
Yeah, and that's what you want to see, Jake, right? I think you go back to your Brock Purdy piece. Anytime you think of the draft, now think about Brock Purdy, because no matter where you get picked, you could be a factor. And so, Antoine Green stepping in and competing, that's all you want him to do. That's all you want him to do, is go and compete, make guys better, and earn a spot on that team. And Jake, I'm going to talk about my 3 favorite picks from the Lions so far. Brian Branch, of course,
love it.
Hendon Hooker. I love that big time, and then Sam Laporta. Those are my top 3, Jake. We talk about Hendon Hooker. You mentioned it, jack of all trades, probably one of the favorite prospects coming out of the draft here, right? We talked about the number 3 that he wears. I always talk about. Sorry, not Hendon Hooker. Sorry, that's number 5. I wanted Hendon Hooker to go a little bit earlier, Jake. I wanted Hendon Hooker to go a little bit earlier. I kept saying the second round that he would go in the second round, but he didn't. But like I said, it's one of my favorite picks there. Hopefully he can get super healthy and get ready to roll and be a viable quarterback, viable backup for Jared Goff. And then going back to your Brian Branch piece, I want to double down on that, Jake. And so going back to PFF, right, the good old PFF, what I
know what stat you're about to drop, and I love it.
It's crazy. So I have here since 2014, since PFF has been tracking anything, right, on the football field, my man has a 2% missed tackle rate. Sorry, from PFF. Brian Branch has a 2% missed tackle rate. Now, Jake, I know we talk about how impressive it is, right, to not have any penalties, to not have any pressures or sacks, but to miss only 2% of your tackles while you're playing football at the University of Alabama, it's kind of insane, right? I mean, no, you have some other guys that are kind of making life a little bit easier for you and forcing some of the offensive players your way and making it easy for you. But the fact that he missed 2% of his tackles, that's insane. That means his technique is great. Jake, that means his feet are where they need to be whenever you're making tackles. That means his eyes are where they need to be when he's making tackles. And then that means he's just smarter than most people on that football field. That means he's where he needs to be before the other folks get there. He's just scooping up and making plays. So I don't want that to like be overlooked there. But Brian Branch, he might be one of the better picks coming out of the Lions, but you can't sleep on Sam Laporta. You can't sleep on Hendon Hooker. But I just want to double down on Brian Branch there because that's something that's very impressive.
Absolutely. I mean, Brian Branch goes to a secondary that has Emmanuel Mosley, Jerry Jacobs, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I mean, it's crazy. Cam Sutton from the Steelers, Tracy Walker, Kirby Joseph, Afadu Melifonwu. I mean, Will Harris is a guy I really like too. So, I mean, they have guys all over the secondary. Now they have Brian Branch. You can see why they traded Okudah, because if it's not working, we got all this depth. But now it seems to me like they were forced to pick him here because this is just such good value. I'm going to give them a B+ only because of the Jack Campbell pick. I felt like if they really want Jack Campbell, they probably could have traded down a little bit. And, oh, man, if they trade down a little bit, like, remember I had said on one of our shows, you want to be in that 4th round. Like, that's where the value is. And they didn't have a 4th round pick. I still think they made the most of it, though, with Hooker, and Broderick Martin was a little bit of a reach for me, but I get the position. I just think, like, Adebare would have been unbelievable on that defense. We talked about him at Northwestern, but Laporta, Branch, Campbell, Gibbs, Hooker, I mean, these are all potential starters down the road. Antoine Green to top it off in the 7th. I'm going to give them a B+. I feel good about it. I think the Bears did more, but definitely think the Lions, they got a good thing going.
Yeah. And Cynthia Freeland actually said it during the draft. It was like the NFL Plus kind of draft. They did like their own mock draft. And Jake, I can see us being on there one day. But Cynthia Freeland, when that pick came in, she kind of like scrunched her eyes up because she's the data gal. She's big on data. Cynthia is. And when she saw Jack Campbell come through, she was like, wait a minute. Like, just like you said, like, why would you not wait for a value pick? She was like, wait, is that his son or his cousin or something like that having that name? Like, why would you pick a guy like that? What I'm hoping for is a guy like Jack to be hearing that and say, hey, I'm a first rounder for a reason. These folks believe in me. Let me show you. So that's what I want to see. I want to see some Luke Kuechly type stuff coming out of him because people are counting him out being a first rounder, 18th pick overall. So let's see what Jack can do with the Lions.
See what he can do with the Lions. But furthermore, let's see what the Packers did because they have an interesting draft. This is the first draft after turning over a completely new leaf. Moving on with Jordan Love, trading it finally. The Aaron Rodgers saga is over. I mean, finally. I'm sure I speak for a lot of Packers fans, Jets fans. That's over. So
football fans,
football fans. Like we like news. We're in the business of news, but it's the worst type of news where it's like it's sitting there, but it's not like doing anything. It's just like, can you go? Yeah. So I mean, look, they get the pick swap. I do want to make mention, this is why I didn't like the trade for the Jets, because they wanted Broderick Jones, right? And New England screwed them over, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Lucas Van Ness is the pick at 13. Comes in. Some people didn't know how to feel about it. I did, because I think Lucas Van Ness is absolutely worth the 13th pick. And you're going out and you're getting a guy that is just going to be an absolute stud with the right coaching in the NFL. And he already has so much to him. He didn't start a game in college technically, but he was used. He has, positional versatility. I really like that pick, Cam. But where were you on the LVN pick? Did you feel like they reached a little bit?
It's a little bit of reach, Jake. But I mean, at this point, with Aaron Rodgers leaving, who knows what's going on at the Green Bay Packers. But with Lucas Van Ness, I mean, he just looks the part, Jake. I mean, my man looks like an action figure. So, who knows if the Packers fell in love with that. So, but Lucas Van Ness, I think he's going to be a great addition to that defense there, led by Joe Barry. I played for Joe, so at the Rams, and I think Lucas will do fine with him. So, we'll see. But the Packers, like I said, they have a lot. They have a lot to work on. With Jordan Love stepping in for the first time in a long time, they got a lot of things to work out. So with Aaron Rodgers leaving, the heart's a little bit sore over there in the Packers. But I feel like they did decent here in the draft. There, Jake. I mean, I got them as a B- here. So I know we're gonna go walk through some of these players, but Lucas Van Ness, it's a decent pick. It's a decent pick. Like I said, Joe Barry's going to hold him down. I'm on the defensive side there, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts about some of these other picks as well from the Packers.
Yeah, I thought when you look at it, Cam LVN is a best available pick. He's probably a guy they fell in love with, right? It is a whole process. It's like a speed dating process, and you got only have X amount of time before then you have to make the marriage, right? You have to just marry the player, and so that's what they did with LVN. I know they have Preston Smith, and they definitely have Rashawn Gary there, but I think they're getting ready for the future. I mean, Preston Smith isn't going to be around forever, and this could be, plus he never started, but he made an impact as a rotational guy. And he wasn't just a rotational guy. He pretty much played starting reps. He just didn't start. He wasn't credited as the starter. So Lucas Van Ness, like the pick there. Luke Musgrave, this is projection, man. Not a lot of production. I do like the pick though, because you're going out, you're getting a weapon, security blanket for a guy like Jordan Love. Musgrave for me needs to get better as a full on, he is a developmental, but really high ceiling project. Picking him at 42 might seem high to people, but I still think he has enough there to justify it. So I really like that pick. Jaden Reed. All right. We talked about him. He was one of my sleepers. Yeah. Jaden Reed starts day one. Okay. Jaden Reed starts day one opposite Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs. He can play in the slot. He can play on the outside. Personally, I want Doubs in the slot. I want Jaden Reed on the outside, because you can throw it up to Jaden Reed and Jaden's going to go get it, And I think that's the thing a lot of people don't understand is that Jaden Reed is, he's not the tallest wide receiver, but man, that guy plays above the rim. He's not afraid to go get it. He likes contact. He's going to go up, high point the football. And I was just a really big fan of that pick. People will say it's a little bit of a reach at 50. I think that's where he was going. I think that was the buzz coming around him. He's a top 10 receiver in this class. And I think when that wide receiver run happened late in the first round, kind of writing was on the wall. Who else are you going to pick over Jaden Reed at that point, Mm-hmm. So I think that definitely made a lot of sense. And I really like that pick. But who are guys that, stood out to you at that point?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the tight end position, at the Packers. When it comes to a quarterback's best friend, tight end has to be that person, right? Of course, your offensive line who protects you, but a lot of times when quarterbacks get in trouble, they have to go to someone quickly. So with Luke Musgrave being that go-to person, it makes a lot of sense. With the change of guard here with the Packers, you got Mercedes Lewis. We're not sure where he's going to go after, the whole Aaron Rodgers piece. Will he travel with him? We don't know yet. So you got to get some guys in there that can be stout in the run in the pass game. So Luke Musgrave definitely supporting with the pass game. And then going back to Jaden Reed, Jake, we talked about this on our guys segment. He can play receiver and he can also play special teams. He's effective in both pieces there. You want guys to bring value to your team, and you got to guard our Tucker Kraft, Jake. We talk about Kraft being crafty. That's someone that South Dakota State, they used him in multiple ways. We talked about how the Chiefs use Travis Kelce for wildcat, offensive plays. We talk about some of these flip plays at the offensive line where you can, hike the ball, play action, and then flip the ball to, your tight end, have them go running for a touchdown or short yardage gain. Kraft is that guy. So I like that. I like that as well. You got a guy like Musgrave, you got a guy like Kraft that can really be Jordan Love's best friends. So Jake, I'm definitely rolling with that. And then Colby Wooden, we talked about him as well when we talked about some of our sleepers. I love a Colby Wooden, just what he brings to the table, as a big guy coming out of Auburn. We talked about him being able to stand up, Jake, and also be able to put his hand in the dirt. You need it. These guys have to be able to play different positions. You got Lucas Van Ness on the other side as well. So, we can figure out something for Colby. I think that's big. Someone else that I like on this list here, Jake, I'm seeing a lot of Iowa. I'm seeing a lot of Iowa State, Iowa, some of these players from different places, but that's big. And we got a kicker in the 6th round, Jake. I'm going to end it with this one. You got a kicker coming out of Auburn, Anders Carlson. And we talked about this, right? Do we draft a kicker? Do we not? I think it's important to be able to flip the football field. And a guy like Carlson, playing at Auburn, either the guy scored a lot of points or his team wasn't scoring points. He had to kick the ball away. But you need someone that can put points on the scoreboard and flip the football field. So I'll say he's my favorite pick finally for the Packers there.
You like Anders Carlson a lot. Wow. Okay. All right, Cam. All right.
Hey, I had to
say
show
this
love
right now. Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, you're always showing love for those, specialists there. You know how much work they put in as a guy. You spent a lot of time on special teams. You saw it.
Exactly.
Let's be honest here. They definitely had to have watched our show. The NFC North watched our show. There's a lot of these guys we talked about. I mean, they got two of your guys, Tucker Kraft and Colby Wooden, in this draft alone. I had Jaden Reed in my sleepers. All jokes aside, they probably didn't watch it. But here's what I will say, okay? I didn't understand the Sean Clifford pick at all. I think it's way too high. To me, he was a UDFA quarterback, which isn't a bad thing. It just means I just don't think he was a draftable quarterback prospect. So I thought they reached a little bit on him. Carl Brooks is intriguing. He's listed as a linebacker on NFL.com out of Bowling Green. He's somebody that's buzz was taken off after the Senior Bowl. I was surprised to see him go in the 6th round. I guess it cooled off a little bit. Dontavion Wicks is somebody that had a monster year and kind of a down year at Virginia. So what are you getting out of him? Which Wicks are you getting, so to speak? Are you getting John Wicks? Just kidding, of course. Are you getting the other one where he didn't really play all that well? So that's a question mark there. I think he makes sense for them to kind of add them to that receiver room. I really like Carrington Valentine, who they got in the 7th round. He's a stud, and I don't know if I got around to talk about him at all on the show, but really like him. I believe Lou Nichols III was a transfer. The Packers, to me, this is an interesting class. I like it, and I like some things a lot. Others I don't love. I'm going to give this one a B. The reason for that is because I think, they go out and they get Musgrave, they get Lucas Van Ness, they get Reed and Kraft. I like that. Wooden, solid. I feel like they had a lot of picks I won't say swung and missed on, but I wasn't a super big fan of them based on what was on the board. So I'm gonna give them a straight up B, which isn't bad. It's not a B for bad. It's just B, as in okay, this is better than average. But I thought it could have been better, and I did find the comedy in the fact that right after, because they had to keep the consistency of not drafting wide receivers in the 1st round, it was tight end, wide receiver, tight end. I don't know. I thought that was funny. Right after Rodgers is gone, they go wide receiver, tight end, and tight end. But, B for the Packers there. And then now we got the Vikings. Or sorry, my bad. The USC Vikings, not the Minnesota Vikings. Because they loaded up on the Trojans. I'm wearing the hoodie. Jordan Addison is one of the best route runners in this draft. He was a guy I had a late 1st, early 2nd on. To me, this makes a lot of sense because you're adding a guy that can not only help Justin Jefferson stay open, because eventually teams are just going to double team him, bracket him, all that. But Jordan Addison's too good to just leave alone. That you also have KJ Osborne, and you have guys like Jalen Naylor who they do like. So they only drafted one receiver. They're putting a lot of belief in guys like Naylor. And so for me, Addison, day one slot receiver, day one. Yep. No questions asked. Can get off the line of scrimmage, has that 3rd gear when the ball's in the air. He turns it on to another level. He was the Biletnikoff Award winner at Pitt in 2021. His biggest issue this year is that while he was great, he just didn't have as many touchdowns. I don't care about that. College stats don't mean everything, right? So this guy, really good pick for the Vikings. And then they got Mekhi Blackman, who was one of my guys. I thought Mekhi Blackman, people were sleeping on, and they were. But NFL teams weren't sleeping on him. He went 102, and that's exactly where he deserved to go.
Like it, yeah. Like you said, it might be a USC team or maybe even LSU team with the defensive guys that they got, right? And Jay Ward and Jacqueline Roy. So, but going back to the USC guys, when it comes to the receiver position with Jordan Addison, the fact that he won the Biletnikoff Award at Pitt and then went to USC and still found success, that has to say something. Put him on my team. So you got him and Justin Jefferson on the same squad. That's going to be a problem, right? We see two of these cornerbacks, and Mekhi Blackman and Jay Ward. They're going to have their hands full at practice. They're going to have some long days at practice because they got some guys that can ball, probably some of the best. Jake, I mean, these guys might be one of the better receiver combinations in the NFL. I know the Ravens, they're stacking up a little bit. I know some other teams are stacking up, but this could be arguably one of the better receiving cores when it's all said and done. So I like it, Jake. You mentioned it, doubling down on the quarterback for the Vikings. If you Bleav in your guys, you Bleav in your guys, and the draft will show that, right? And another thing as well, just to see who they have to back him up. We have a Jaren Hall coming out of BYU, one of your guys as well. I know you've been talking highly about Jaren Hall. What do you say? Scout the player, not the helmet, when it comes to a guy like Jaren Hall with that BYU helmet. So I'll pass the mic over to you, but I love it, Jake. They're doubling down on their quarterback at the Vikings. They're having protection or having someone behind him to play as well, and then some receivers to throw to, some cornerbacks to get him the football back. But what are your thoughts on that Jaren Hall pick there for the Vikings?
Yeah, I think Jay Ward is being slept on. I had him listed as a safety. I see they might have drafted him as a corner. He was a top 10 safety on my board. So another really good pick by the Vikings. I pick 134. They didn't have a second round pick because keep in mind you have to take into account they traded for TJ Hawkinson. That is their pick. So that was a good move, I thought. That was good. I didn't think the Lions would move a first-round tight end who they drafted early first round for him. But, hey, especially not to a division rival. But the Vikings knew what they were doing. They're cooking with grease there. Jaquelin Roy is somebody that I think is going to be a pretty solid NFL pro. He'll be one of those guys that sticks around for a while. Could he start? I won't rule it out. I think that was a good pick in the 5th. Jaren Hall, I love the pick because here's the thing. Jaren Hall is not a 5th round prospect. Jaren Hall fell to the 5th round, I found out, because of the injury concerns. Okay, He hurt his shoulder, I Bleav it was. So that's why he fell to the 5th round. But this is somebody that doesn't need to play right away. Okay, I said he makes half-field reads. He's not ready to start, but he's going to be behind Kirk Cousins. So give him 2 years, and this guy could be your franchise quarterback. And I Bleav that. I know some people were saying he's just a guy on our channel, under the clip I put. And then there were some people that were like, hey, all right, Jake, all right, I agree with you, Yeah. But for me, Jaren Hall in the 5th round, I mean, he was the best quarterback by far available at that point. So I love that pick. And then DeWayne McBride, he's got the tools. There are people that were concerned about his off-the-field issues. Now, I won't really get into it because I didn't really see any. But I didn't look that hard. I was just scouting his film. He's an interesting one. There were people that had all sorts of grades on 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I saw him as a late day 3 as well. So this is like he got drafted where I expected. His biggest issue, Cam, a lot of fumbles. He's got to get better in ball security. Got to do more of those curls, Got to do more of those curls. You brought that up last time, so I had to throw that out.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you protect that football is do them curls, work on your hand grip. But I do see here, right, like for PFF, he has a 94.1 grade in 2022. So that's dang good, right? 4.6 yards per carry or yards after contact per carry. So that's big time. But the fumbles, Jake, the game is called football. If you can't protect that football, you won't be playing football. So for McBride, he's gonna have to figure that out the next level when he gets to the Vikings because that's that can win you games and lose you games. So that's something that's gonna have to be figured out there. Like you said, he's a 7th rounder, so definitely find his way on special teams. That's gonna be important and prove that he can hold on to the ball. That's key there.
I'm with you there, man. I'm definitely with you there. I think all in all, I would say this division gets a collective grade of an A-. I'm going to give a B+ to the Vikings. So B+ to the Vikings,
same here.
A B to the Packers. I gave an A-, I Bleav, to the Lions and an A to the Bears. So that's where I stand right now. I think that this division got better. I mean, there's no question. I would say the Lions and Bears got a little bit better than some of the other teams, in my opinion. But they all got better, and I think that's the name of the game. But one thing I will say about the Vikings is that if you look at that team and what they did in UDFA, which is a big part of, the after process, which right?
Yep.
They went out and they got Brenton Cox Jr., who I think is incredibly intriguing. I'm sorry. The Packers went out and got Brenton Cox Jr., who I think is incredibly intriguing. He's one of the guys that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
And I think people are they're sleeping on him a little bit. And I'm just putting his name out there because I would not be surprised if he's one of those guys that just gets it together, because we talked about it. Maybe his off the field. Now, I won't even say his off the field stuff is bad. He doesn't have like crazy arrest records or anything like that. Just sounds to me like maybe there's some concerns about his maturity. And like I started to say, I mean, what 20-something-year-old doesn't have maturity issues? So,
yeah.
I think really when you look at it, the Vikings, their UDFA class, they go out and they get Ivan Pace Jr. We talked about him a little bit. We touched on him on one of our shows. Andre Carter II. So I like that pickup. So they went out and they got some guys that I'm looking at in undrafted rookie free agency. Very interesting. But one name to look out for. Ready for this, Vikings fans? One name to keep an eye on, and this is courtesy of the czar of the playbook, Emory Hunt. Cam, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a great dude. He knows his thing. He scouts these small school guys. He's been talking about this guy on CBS Sports. When they say sleepers, he went with a deep sleeper. Former quarterback, looks like he's turning wide receiver, Southeastern Louisiana's Cephas Johnson III. Okay? Just remember that name. Because I think he can ball at a quarterback. Like, I think he's a good option to fight for a quarterback spot. But the guy is also, he's built kind of like Cam Newton a little bit. And he's also working out at wide receiver. So we'll see what ends up happening. 6'5", 226 pounds.
Woo.
My man has it,
Yeah, that's a big boy.
So, yeah. So I just wanted to give Cephas Johnson the third a little shout out there, and Emory Hunt, who does an incredible job. He scouts all these players no one else really has time to scout. He's got like 1,000 prospect reports on his thing. He's a friend of my show, so gotta give him a shout. But yeah, Cephas Johnson's a guy to look out for. For the Minnesota Vikings. Do you have any UDFAs by chance? A guy that stood out to you.
Yeah, well, yeah. I want to go back to that piece, Jake. You mentioned Brenton Cox, right? Going to the Packers. The Packers grade I had for them a B, I think it was. I'm gonna go B+ now, Jake. With that Brenton Cox piece, we talked about that. We got to bump that up. With them getting Lucas Van Ness on the edge, Kobe Wooden on the edge, and then Brenton Cox. I'm like, I see what you're doing here. You're going to get some folks that can really apply pressure. And you talk about Brenton Cox. It's a personality thing, and we talked about this, Jake, on our other episodes. But it's the NFL fine system, right? The good old NFL fine system. If things aren't working out, right, you make sure you bring in some outside help to support them. And if that outside help isn't working, you just find them. But I do have faith in Joe Barry and him being the defensive coordinator of the Packers. I think Brenton Cox will be in great hands, right? Joe Barry, he's seen it all, done it all. He's a vet in the game. And so getting someone like Brenton Cox to be on your team, and for Brenton Cox to see a guy like Lucas Van Ness, coming out of Iowa, to see a guy like Kobe Wooden, someone he's played against, being in the SEC, he's going to have some guys that can get him on the straight and narrow. So, I'm sure with him seeing this NFL draft, Jake, he's going to have that chip on his shoulder. He's going to be like, man, I should have been in those rounds. I should have got drafted. So he's going to have to work on himself. The only reason why he's there is because of his personality. So I think he's going to get the work done between now and when the season starts. And I have faith in the Packers team to get him right and get him going the right direction. So the Packers, they jumped up a grade for me, Jake. I'm going to give them a B+ now.
So I wanted to mention one guy before we get to the birthday piece and call it a day, Cam. Tyson Bagent. He really turned heads at the Senior Bowl. I'm sure you've heard his name before. Shepherd quarterback. I don't know if it's his family or his fan base, but they're out there on Twitter, man. They're hostile if you say that name wrong. I said Bagent, and they came at me. But this is somebody I did a actual a draft 1-minute scouting report on with my YouTube shorts. And, Bagent's an interesting guy. He's somebody to look out for, has that mobility, has a, good ball velocity, can really, whip it. And so he might actually make the team. They got Nathan Peterman, they got PJ Walker behind Justin Fields, but look out for Tyson Bagent. He's not a guy that I'm willing to sleep on out of Shepherd. But
nice.
That's going to do it. We'll get into the birthday piece, a special happy birthday to Hall of Fame running back out of the Jets and the Patriots, Curtis Martin. He turns 50 today, and now all of a sudden I'm feeling old because that was my childhood, watching guys like Curtis Martin.
Big 50.
And now this guy's 50. But happy birthday to him. All pro, rookie of the year, 5-time Pro Bowler, played 8 years with the Jets, 3 with the Patriots to start his career, 166 games, Cam, and 17,430 scrimmage yards with 100 total touchdowns. My man lived in the end zone, and my man just 17,000 all-purpose yards. I mean, come on now.
That's big time. I mean, he big 50 now. Hey, that's big time. Curtis Martin, happy birthday. And hit that milestone at 50, Jake. I mean, man, I'm 30. So, hey, I'm almost getting there as well.
Oh, man. Well, hey, until next time, we're off the edge. Jake Ellenbogen, Cameron Lynch. You can follow Cam at Cameron Lynch 50. You can follow me at JK Bogan. And you can follow our show at Off the Edge Show. And that's going to do it. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys take care. Be well. And we'll see you guys soon.